Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our Heroes Biographies. Today, we are getting to know a character that survived so much and has given us even more. I'm talking about the incredible Daniel, and we will learn more about what makes him such an impactful biblical hero. This is Heroes 2 Hero Biography. Joining us today, we have Dr. Frank Hasel. How are you today, Dr. Hasel?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
We are very, very happy to have you join us today. We are so excited for the insight that you are going to provide into the life of Daniel and who he was. I think a lot of us think we might know a lot about Daniel, but as I was preparing for this right now, I was just thinking, I said, man, there's so many details about Daniel's life, so many things that if we start to list the things that are commonly known, we could be here forever. So I can only imagine the things that maybe we might not know. And to just kind of refresh everyone's memory, the things that we do know, everything that I think the common person knows about Daniel is that he was taken into captivity by the Babylonians. We know that he was given a Babylonian name, and we also know that we never find anything written about him that's actually negative in the Bible, which I think is very remarkable. He did serve various rulers during the exile, and he was faithful to God and devoted to his prayer life. And I think the most commonly known fact about Daniel is the fact that he survived a lion's den. I think that's the story we first get to know Daniel with. And of course, we know that he gives us so many important writings and prophecies, things that we are still learning today. So Dr. Hasel, today we're excited to hear the things that you are going to be able to give us a little more information. So I have a few questions. So let's jump into those, okay?
Sure, let's go ahead.
All right. Well, the first one is, why do we like Daniel's story so much? I think we all love that story. Ever since we first hear it, ever since we first hear about the lions, we just kind of become enamored with this character. Why is that?
Well, you've given us many reasons already, Kenia, and let me just add a few other things why I think Daniel is so fascinating to me and so inspiring. I would say one of the things that I really appreciate about this person in the Bible is his resilience. Now, we have to understand Daniel went through something that was very difficult to endure. Defeat. His country, his God was defeated by the enemies. Now, if you experience something traumatic like that and your whole nation, your family, and everything is basically deported into another country, you feel loneliness. And if you've ever lived in another country and you've had to learn to speak another language and you had to face adversity and defeat, you need resilience in order to survive. And I think that is something that I see in Daniel, that he had that character trait that really helped him to succeed and survive in an environment that was very hostile, that was very foreign to him, and that he was not at home at all. So that's one aspect that I really like with him. Now there are many others that that come to my mind. If you face enemies like he did, and he was deported, you basically you don't have any rights. You know, you are at the mercy of those who take you captive. And in order to face that, I think you need to have courage. You cannot be a timid person. And Daniel seems to be a person, together with his friends, who was quite courageous in many difficult and challenging circumstances. You've mentioned the lion's den. Yeah, you know, we have the story of his friends not willing to bow down in front of that statue that was erected, and they should pray to that, and they were not willing to compromise their faith. And Daniel similarly was courageous, in very trying circumstances. So this is something that I really appreciate with Daniel. There actually, the moment I start to talk about him, more things come to my mind, So I don't know whether you want to ask some other questions, but there are a few other things that I think we can really, really learn from him. One thing would be, and that's not something that we usually associate with Daniel, but I think he must have been a very diligent person.
Mm-hmm.
Diligent means that he was willing to learn many new things that he was not familiar with, starting with a different language, starting with a different grammar, starting with different sciences that the Babylonians were experts and world leaders in. And I think he was willing to learn new things. And if you want to succeed, and he did, you must be diligent. You cannot you cannot afford to be lazy, really. So I think Daniel must have been a very diligent person, and God really blessed that. And he and his friends succeeded. And they became even wiser and more knowledgeable than all the others around him. And they were not stupid. They were educated people. So the peer pressure was right there, and he just trusted God, and he did his part, I think, and he studied hard, and he was diligent, and God blessed. So that's another trait that I see in his person that really makes him a person to emulate, to follow in many ways.
I definitely think that you touched on something when you said that the more we talk about Daniel, the more we realize there's more to tell, right? We really can't go into Daniel's story thinking, oh, I'm going to pick just two things that really make me like this character, because I just think that his entire life was such a great example to all of us. And there were so many different circumstances, so many elements. The fact that, like you said, he was in this place that wasn't his home, and he had so many things to deal with. And just that already might resonate with so many people who are in different places far from home and are also trying to get accustomed to this new land. And then the fact that you say that he's so diligent and how much he must have been disciplined as well, just kind of gives us something to say, well, I need to be as diligent as Daniel. And I don't think we've ever really said that we want to be as diligent as Daniel, but what a wonderful goal to try to achieve.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that you've mentioned a lot of these positive things. Now, that being said, we've said all these great things, right? But ultimately, these are all great things that anyone can have, right? Anybody can be diligent. Anybody can survive in a different place. Anybody can thrive. But then what makes Daniel such a hero? What makes him stand out from everyone else? What in his life makes him that hero that now we have in Heroes too?
Well, nobody is born a hero. Let's face it. Everybody is born normal. And heroes are made in normal circumstances. So you and I, we can become heroes just like Daniel could. He was not born a hero, but he was faithful. And I think in times of challenges, in times of where you're faced with making compromises, maybe, and you stay faithful to your convictions and to the Word of God, this is how heroes are made. And so if we look at Daniel, it's not that he was born superhuman. He was not Superman from the beginning. But with God's help and with those little decisions in his daily life, I think he became the person that we admire so much. We talked about his resilience, courage, and diligence, but he was also a faithful person. So he had strong convictions, and he believed in the God who was defeated, who apparently lost the battle, and yet he did not give up. He did not throw him out. Sometimes we are in circumstances in life that are not so easy, and where we don't see that God is present and we get the impression: is God alive at all? Is he listening? Is he doing anything to save us, to help us in that difficult circumstance that we find ourselves in? And some people, they just let God go, and not so Daniel. He said, well, I still believe God is alive, and it turns out that he was right. And so this is something that we can learn from him. And it shows in the little details of daily life, really. We read that part of his daily routine, you may call it that way, was to have times of prayer where he would pray, and that was important to him. And I think he also studied the scriptures carefully. He was a student of scripture, so he took time to do that. These things don't come naturally to you. They don't just happen. You need to make specific plans so that this can happen, that you create the environment that this can happen. And he provided for that, and God blessed that. And if that is part of your routine, if that is part of your daily life, if that is what you're used to, then God can work through that to inform your thinking, can help you in your decision-making processes, and can give you perspectives that you otherwise would not have. And it all sums up, and I don't think that Daniel himself saw himself as a hero, but he certainly was a person who showed excellence, highest excellence. I mean, he was the third in the country. He was second even to the king, and you don't become that just by being average. You don't become that just by being normal. I think he was a person who was dedicated, and he did his work carefully, and he was a person that could be trusted. Nobody will be put in a leadership position like Daniel was placed if people don't trust you. And they trust you if they see that you're reliable, that your word counts, that what you say is what you mean. And this kind of helps the people to see this is a person that I can trust. And this is the same with God. He sees whether I'm willing to live by what I have discovered in his word, and whether I actually start practicing what I know I should do. And that builds trust. And I think that makes a hero.
There's so much that was said there. And I just think that one of the things that stands out is that he had an exemplary character, right? His values, everything that made Daniel who he was, he said so many examples, not only for us in our spiritual life, but also even in our professional life. You just mentioned so many things that if we put them into practice, we would also be achieving great things professionally. So I just think that he was such a well-rounded character from what you're explaining here. Though in every aspect of his life, he just demonstrated that, like you said, he was giving excellence. Every time, everything was excellence. And I love how you mentioned his prayer life and how that was such a key role to everything that he did. The fact that he had this relationship with God, he was very disciplined even in that. And so what makes him ultimately a hero is everything that he is able to acquire from that relationship and then put it into practice in his daily life. So I think we're getting so much just for every aspect of our life. And we've mentioned a lot of positive things, a lot of wonderful things about Daniel. And something that stands out is that I did read somewhere that it says that there is nothing negative ever written about Daniel. So is there anything that he possibly might have struggled with? Anything that was a little bit difficult for him? Because he sounds like he had no struggles.
Oh, he had plenty of struggles, I'm sure, because he was a normal person. He was a normal human being. And being in the situation like he was, you encounter struggles and questions. Now we know that the stories in the book of Daniel had a positive ending, a good ending. But if you were in his own shoes, you would not know that that it would end well. When he was threatened to eat the food that the king provided, the unclean food, and he was not willing to eat that, he did not know whether that maybe cost his life. Maybe he would end into prison, or whether that would be the end of his career. So we know the story has a good ending because we know the story from the beginning to the end. But once you are in the story, you don't see the ending yet, but you have to trust God that he will keep his word and that he will watch over you. And this is something that we can learn from him. You mentioned, there's nothing negative about him. Well, here is another positive that also gives a little hint that Daniel was not just perfect. The positive is, I think, that he had great humility, despite the fact that he was so successful, that he made an amazing career in that country and had influence. And once you have influence and you have power, it changes your character. You just give a person power and influence, and you'll see what character that person has. And Daniel had great integrity. He would not be swayed. He would not be manipulated. He could not be bribed. He was truthful to the principles. And he was a quite amazing, humble person despite all that success. I'm reminded of his prayer. I think in chapter 9, when he prays for his people and he sees his own people really were not as perfect as they should be, and they suffered for their own sins, the exile and things like that. And when he starts praying, he doesn't just pray for his people, he includes himself into that prayer. Now that to me is an indication that he was aware that he also needed forgiveness. He was aware that he also needed grace. He was aware that this is ultimately the foundation of everything in God's salvation. And so he doesn't just pray for the others. He doesn't just ask for forgiveness. He includes himself into that prayer. And that to me is, on the one hand, a sign of great humility. On the other hand, it's an indication that he was aware that he also needed forgiveness and that he was not just flawless.
You mentioned that, and I just started thinking that ultimately, whatever struggles he had in his life, whatever we might not know about that was a difficult situation for him, the fact that he had this prayer life, the fact that he was presenting everything to God in prayer, he wasn't presenting just others, but he was presenting himself in these prayers, then that lets me know that that was the key to his success. That was the key to him being able to overcome so many struggles, to overcome these situations, because they were not easy situations. I don't think all of us are ready to be able to die for what we believe in when it comes to Jesus, when it comes to the Word of God. And the fact that he was able to do that tells me that that relationship was very strong, which leads us to our next question, which I think we've already touched upon, and is that relationship with God. What was that like? What was his relationship to God? We know about his prayer life, and we can already kind of get an idea that it must have been a very, very good relationship.
Yeah, I've wondered myself what his spiritual life looked like. We don't know that much about it. We know that he prayed. We know that he talked with God in prayer. I mean, he asked God for help when his friends were faced with, and he himself were faced with that decision not to eat the food, or to eat the food. And in other important things, he apparently was a person who had a close relationship to God. He was familiar with the scriptures. He regularly prayed different times of the day, and he reserved special time for God, and he would not let go just because other people decided that they didn't like it. So he was not a people pleaser. If you want to be a hero, you can't be a people pleaser. you have to have principles, and you have to stick with your convictions, even about God. And I think uh, what I would like to encourage the young people really is, Daniel was not a pastor, he was not a nurse, he was not a medical doctor, yet he served God with his talents and his skills in amazing ways. And I think we need more people like that who excel in their area of expertise, be that for the government, be that as a lawyer, be that as an engineer, be that whatever it is. You can be a witness for Jesus in that area. And if you are careful in your work, if you are diligent, if you are faithful, if your word can be trusted, I think you can make a wonderful witness, call it hero, for God in that sphere of influence that God has placed you. And I think this is one of the greatest amazing things, and I think this is what God desires. He wants us in our spiritual life, not just on Sabbath morning or on a particular day of the week. He wants that spirituality to permeate everyday life, our daily routine, and everything we do. Be that, if you are a mother or a father, be a hero as a mother and a father for your children, for your family. If you are placed in a leadership position or with a position of responsibility, be a hero in that particular sphere of influence that God has placed you, and use your talents to the best of your ability. Be always a learner, and stay a learner, that you're willing to learn and improve your talents and abilities that God has given you. And you can be a great blessing to others around you who will see you and observe what you're doing.
You've given us so much to learn about Daniel, and there's so much that we can apply of his story to our very own lives. And I was just taking some notes of some of the things that you said that really, really struck out to me. The fact that if we want to be a hero like Daniel, we can't be people pleasing. We can please God, but he was not a people pleaser. You also mentioned that heroes aren't born, they are made. And he was able to make that daily by looking for God and also working not just in his spiritual life, but being diligent in everything, which is the next point, that he excelled in his area of expertise. Like you just mentioned, we can also excel in our areas of expertise. We don't need to be pastors. We don't need to be doctors. Whatever our expertise is, we can excel in it if we are diligent and to remain faithful, to be a witness. And I really liked one of the last things you just said here. You said that we have to let our spirituality permeate to every aspect of our lives, so that we can be a hero in every aspect of our lives, in our daily lives. So I just think that everything you've given us are things that we can apply to our lives that maybe we didn't consider before. When we think about Daniel's story, we kind of just think about all of these extraordinary circumstances in Daniel's life, but we don't stop to consider that, again, Daniel was a human being just like all of us, and he had his skills and he had his abilities, and he used them ultimately for the glory of God. So we thank you for everything that you've given us today, Dr. Hasel. Thank you so much for all of the insight, for just taking us to a deeper understanding of who Daniel was. I think that we can now see him with different eyes, and I'm excited to maybe go back into Daniel and read a little bit more about him, take some time, and just go deeper into his story. Thank you so much, Dr. Hasel.
Yes, be a Daniel and be a hero, and be surprised what God can do through you.
Amen. So everybody, there's something that you've learned today, everyone watching. Be a Daniel, be a hero. Thank you, Dr. Hasel, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. And to everyone, thank you for joining us on another Heroes 2 biography. I don't know about you, but I am learning so much. I think we are all learning so much, so many different things that we can also apply to our lives. And how great is that? that we can learn about these biblical heroes, these very famous and very amazing biblical heroes. So make sure that you don't miss out on our upcoming biographies on our next Heroes to Hero biography. Until then, bye-bye.